Dear students, welcome to session 2 of our HKICS student gatherings. I am Louisa Lau, Registrar of the HKICS. I'm pleased to have two speakers for tonight's webinar session. Let me welcome Dr. Mac. Dr. Mac is a member of HKICS Education Committee and Assessment Review Panel. And he is also the chairman of the Review Panel Group of Management Subjects. Another speaker is Professor Susana Yuen. She will join us later. Tonight's webinar session topic is updates on CGQP examinations, management, accounting, and finance modules. I'm glad that we have students from both Hong Kong and the mainland for this session. As you are aware, the Chartered Governance Qualifying Program, CGQP, was officially launched on 1st January 2020. The CGQP is an internationally recognized program with a curriculum developed by the Chartered Governance Institute, formerly the ICSA, and adapted by HKICS to meet local needs and applications. The CGQP has also been adopted by the Canadian, Malaysian, Singaporean, and the United Kingdom, Ireland, and related territories, in short, UCRET, divisions of the Chartered Governance Institute. With the launch of the CGQP, HKICS continues to enhance the learning support for our students, such as the free of charge online study material and online access to pilot papers and mark scheme. And also the regular examination preparatory program held by the Hong Kong Youth Space and the examination technique workshops are offered. And we have already held the first online gathering session on how to use the Prime Law study material platform for CGQP's program. So tonight, the briefing consists of two parts. The first part is about management modules of strategic management and risk management. Dr. Mac will spend about 20 minutes for each module, and we'll move on to the next one. Without further ado, Dr. Mac, please. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, all students. My name is Mac. You can just meet Dr. Mac or Dr. Mac Mak. Today, we will concentrate on two subjects. One is strategic management. From the information, you can see the PowerPoint. First, very important, this is just a very general introduction of the subject. If you want to get a higher mark, you should attend the examination technique workshop and also read the online document and all the exam documents in details. My role is to give you a brief introduction of the subject. Starting in this year, we have the Chartered Governance Qualifying Program, CGQP. And it consists of 8 subjects. 2 of them are elective. And here I'll concentrate on part 2, strategic management and risk management. If you have the syllabus of the program, you'll notice that under strategic management module, our purpose is to focus on the component of organizational strategy. The aim is to give you the element, process, and techniques regarding the development and implementation of strategy. It also gives you the knowledge and the skills to be an effective governance professional. It enables you to apply the concept and principle of strategic management to organization. After you complete this subject, it will equip you to understand the nature and importance of strategy, why strategic planning is important to an organization, and what you can do as a chartered secretary or a corporate governance professional contribute to the organization. You can critically evaluate an organization's environment, culture, governance, and purpose. The board of directors will expect your professional input. You can also be able to critically analyze the strategic alternatives available to an organization. Given different choices of strategy, what are your recommendations? And then you can be able to analyze the challenges related to change management and the development of appropriate tactics to manage change. These are the things that will equip you in strategic management. Here you can see a very good framework. It is called the Chartered Governance Institute, the competency framework for governance professionals. When you tell other people what you are doing, you can see that the blue color is what you understand, what I know. These are related to the subject that you study. And then the practice, what I do. It is your daily work in your role as governance professionals. But one thing also very important is the value, what I believe. For example, doing the right things, maintaining interdependence, being open-minded, and being purposeful. These are the framework that in UK they use it, and we find that it is very useful to you because the qualification is the same. It enables you to do things regarding good governance. For the strategic management module, the scopes there are 6 different sessions. You can see the distribution of the percentage. Here, for each subject, we expect you to spend 200 hours for it. Therefore, A, strategy and strategic planning, 15%. It means you need to spend about 30 hours for it. 15 times 2, 30 hours. B, understanding the external environment, another 15%. C is the biggest component, the impact of culture, governance, and purpose on strategy, making a total of 30%. That means you should spend at least 60 hours for it. For D is assessing alternative strategies. It accounts for 15%. And then for implementation of strategy, another 15%. And then for managing change, 10%. That means you have to spend at least 20 hours in this component of the syllabus. Remember that it is important to put the theoretical and the practical elements on each area. In the examination, you can show your understanding in the real-life application. If we look at it in more detail, in strategy and strategic planning, you have to learn about the nature of strategy and planning, strategic management, developing strategy. Here, the importance of leadership and team leadership. For B, understanding the external environment. You have to analyze the operational environment of your business. You recognize the boundary between internal of the near micro and far macro environment. And then for the company, what is your strategic capability and the competence? And then there's some method used to assess strategic capability and the benefit and limitation of different methods. Under C, talking about the impact of culture, governance, and purpose on strategy. Strategy and organizational culture. Talking about the importance of understanding cultural influence on strategy making. The governing body and strategy. Expressing of organizational purpose. What is the statement of purpose? And then business ethics and social responsibility. The meaning of ethics, scope, dimension, and impacts of ethics. And then, of course, CSR, corporate social responsibility, talking about sustainability, social business, and creating shared value. And then the role of individual and managers. For D, you have to learn about assessing alternative strategic idea, talking about the strategic choice. What are the choices available to you? And then how you develop different strategy and make a decision. For E, talking about implementation. It is the organizational structure and design. What kind of organization structure that we have, divisional or matrix, and the advantages and disadvantages of different organizational structure. And then the strategic control and performance management, performance and effectiveness concept, issues, and approach for the organization. For F, talking about managing change. It is managing strategic change. There are two aspects, the process dynamic and the people dynamic. And then the change of leadership role and the method of managing change. These are the syllabus that we have to cover. Starting this year, there will be an pre-released case material distributed to you about 6 weeks before the examination. Here, what you should do is to read and examine the pre-released case material, highlighting the relevant facts, underlying the key issues, and taking notes on what is important. And then focus your analysis by identifying 2 to 4 issues related to the subject. For example, strategic management. What are the strategic management issues it is talking about? Remember, for this pre-released case material, it is for 3 different subjects: boardroom dynamic, risk management, and strategic management. The case material are the same, but the questions are different. Therefore, you have to look at it and think about the issue related to the subject that you are studying. And then you examine, why do the issue exist? And how do they affect the organization? For example, if you want to have a strategic choice, how your companies expand to different areas, different countries, then you have to study what are the relevant information related to it. Giving a choice of different country, how you will make the decision to enter which market. And then you have to consider the possible action for senior management. As the company secretary, chartered professional, governance professional, your role is to give the professional input to the board of directors. Therefore, based on your expert knowledge, you have to make recommendations to senior management. But here, we have to remember that we have to make the recommendation based on justification with principles and practice of different subjects. And then, as the company secretary, make recommendation on the best solution with justification. You have 6 weeks to prepare for the case material. Your role is to understand the background information. Think about relevant issues. You may read some paper and then find out the material related to it before you go to the examination room. But when you enter the examination room, the next PowerPoint, it is during the examination. During the examination, remember to read the question carefully. Although you prepare for the details of it, now the actual question comes up. You have to read the question carefully. You have 4 questions for it. Therefore, you delete the one that you feel uncomfortable. And then you analyze critically on the case scenario based on the relevant theoretical framework and real-life experience. Therefore, question, related framework, and any real-life experience you can make recommendation. And then you make recommendation by demonstrating your in-depth analysis of the case scenario and the mastery of the subject materials. Here, you have to make your recommendation through the subject that you study, and then with the professional input into the subject area with justification. And then beware of the time constraint you have in the examination. You have only 3 hours. 15 minutes is for the reading time, and then 3 hours to answer the examination question. And then you have to allocate sufficient time for each question. Here, for the examination paper structure and format, for the 3 modules, strategic management, risk management, and boardroom dynamic, candidates are required to give they will receive the pre-released case material 6 weeks before. And then for the written examination, you have 3 hours plus 15 minutes reading time. Remember, when you read the paper, don't write anything. Just read it and prepare for it. Out of the 4 questions set in this part A, choose only 3. Section A is based on the case material. And then 75%. You have to complete 3 of them. Each of them is 25 marks. For section B, it is not based on the pre-released case study. You have 25 marks, and you are required to answer 1 of them. If you remember to put your question structure in details, then you will know how to prepare your time. Lastly, the tips for successful examination preparation. Study the syllabus carefully. What are covered, what are not covered. Practice on the part of paper. You have the part of paper with the examination marking scheme. It is very useful. Take a look. Attend the exam technique workshop. Check the requirement of the examination. And then, as soon as possible, start the revision. Read the study material available to you from Hong Kong HKICS. The other relevant materials, such as newspaper, magazines, business, and management journals, are useful. Make sure that you keep yourself up to date. For each answer, it is an essay. Therefore, you should remember an essay structure. The usual format is introduction, body, and conclusion. Remember, you are writing a paragraph. Try to minimize the bullet point with nothing to justify. Expand your bullet point into a paragraph. Aim for quality answer and not the length of the answer. You can write 10 pages of the material with no box if you are not answering the question. And then manage your time effectively. Make sure that you attempt all the questions. And the total study time is 200 hours. This is a brief introduction about the subject, strategic management. Good luck and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mac. And that you are very good at time management. Exactly, that we now with 20 minutes. So without further ado, we will start to proceed for the next subject is on risk management.
Mm-hmm. Now I'll introduce the subject, risk management. It is a new subject, especially for the Hong Kong and the mainland student. Risk management is important because of the importance to the board of directors. Therefore, you should spend time to learn the details of it. Here, I'll give you a general introduction. Remember to read the study material in details to help you to prepare for the examination. It is the Chartered Governance Qualifying Program, CGQP, starting in January this year. We have two parts. Part 1, 4 subjects. Part 2, another 4 subjects. And here, I will focus on risk management. For the risk management module, you have to develop and extend your knowledge about risk management. How risk management related to compliance management and component of effective corporate governance in an organization. You have to explore the board's role in terms of risk management and the people, process, and techniques that can be used to support the board and ensure the effective assessment, monitoring, and control of risk at all levels of an organization. For this subject, what you are going to learn, you will demonstrate an understanding of the global and regional regulatory framework for risk management and the relationship between risk management and corporate governance, compliance, and ethics. Here, regional regulatory framework is important because in Hong Kong, we have the Hong Kong regulation and those in the mainland China. You should also know about it. In UK, they will use it as the global framework. Second, you have to critically evaluate approaches to risk management and advise the board on the use of risk framework as a basis of appraising, evaluating, and supporting risk management. Risk comes to the level of board of directors. Therefore, they have to make the decision for the organization. Critically evaluate the management of risk and provide professionally appropriate advice to those responsible for governance. That's why we have this new subject to help you to perform better in your workplace. It also gives you, telling you critically examine the impact of the business environment on risk with regard to legislation, policy, and industry changes. You are going to critically evaluate the impact of organizational conduct, behavior, and culture on risk management practice. Therefore, these are all the important elements for this subject. Here is the framework. We call it the competency framework for governance professionals. The Chartered Governance Institute introduced this to remind all the professionals how to enable good governance. The blue color reminds us the understanding, what I know. Here, talking about different subjects that you study. For example, governance, strategy and culture, regulation and compliance, and finance and risk. For the green color, talking about your value, what I believe. Here, talking about doing the right thing, maintaining interdependence, being open-minded, and being purposeful. For the practice, it is what I do, what you do every day in the organization. It is influencing and enabling, anticipating and solving problems. Solving problem is good, but also you have to anticipate the problem. And then you have to do the advising and recording, taking the minute, formal document for them. and then planning and organizing in an organization. These are important areas of the daily function of the governance professional. For the module, scope of the risk management module, there are three main areas. A, talking about risk framework, account for 50%. B, managing risk and compliance, 25%. And C, risk and the business environment, 25%. When you prepare for your examination, you have to spend about 100 hours for risk framework, 50 hours for managing risk and compliance. For risk and business environment, 25%, that means 50 hours, making a total of at least 200 hours in your study for this module. And remember to integrate both the theoretical knowledge that you learn and the practical elements from your working experience. For the risk framework, you have to start with a global risk environment. Therefore, you must have an understanding of the risk framework in Hong Kong and in other countries. For example, in UK or in other countries. For regulatory framework, here talking more about different areas, like in Hong Kong, the rules and regulation of the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, the Security and Future Commission. You must understand these areas. And then the sector regulation. If you're in the insurance sector, the Hong Kong Insurance Authority, Hong Kong Stock Exchange, these are the organizations with relevant regulations that you have to concentrate and learn. For the risk management framework and standard, you have to learn about the Institute of Risk Management standard from UK. And it is a very good key risk management concept to give you an idea on what to do. And then for the risk management as a foundation of organizational success, how you have the organization to be successful with the understanding and implementation of risk management. And then the key risk management concept, talking about the business risk, credit risk, market risk, etc. For the risk management process, it talks about the different process of risk management, like process overview, risk identification, risk assessment, risk monitoring, and risk control. And then different perspective and responsibility. And then the framework for governance, risk and compliance, talking about the compliance management framework and the governance structure for risk management. For managing risk and compliance, you have to evaluate and report the risk, report it to the board of directors. Risk culture, appetite, and tolerance, talking about how to assess, monitor, and control about risk, and also about organizational culture related to the risk culture. And then compliance management, talking about the roles and responsibility of different areas in the organization. For example, you know more about is audit committee, and then you may become familiar with the internal audit function, and then the risk management function as well. You have to learn different compliance management tools to help you to work better. For example, compliance policies and procedure, compliance code of conduct, compliance review and audit. These are all listed in this syllabus. For C, you have to concentrate on the risk and the business environment, including the risk control strategy, and then the risk management in practice, talking about the CG reporting and the ESG reporting. And then the common application about risk, for example, the cyber risk management, the project risk management, and the supply chain risk management, etc. And then the trends and future development for risk management, as well as the more trends and future development for risk management. Here, talking about not only the development in UK or in overseas, but concentrate more on the future and risk in Hong Kong as well. Therefore, the compliance, the complexity of the business environment, the globalization, the disruptive technology, as well as the digital transformation. These are the trends for the future development of the risk management, explained in the study material. In Hong Kong and in UK, there are some differences. In risk framework A, remember that the regulatory framework and sector regulation, you have to know about the local application. And then the risk management framework and standard, you have to know about not just in UK, but also the situation in Hong Kong. And then for the risk and the business environment, talking about the trend and future development of the risk management, we have prepared for detailed material for you in the teaching material. Therefore, don't worry, we already include them in your study materials. For this subject, you have a pre-released case material. For June diet, strategic management, risk management, and volume dynamics are 3 separate pre-released cases. Therefore, each subject will have a 1 released case. Right? You have to read and examine the pre-released case material by taking notes, highlighting relevant facts, as well as underlying key issues. And then focus your analysis by identifying 2 to 4 issues related to the subject that you study. For example, risk management from the material. What are the issues that is related to risk management? And then you examine why do the issue exist and how do they affect the organization. For example, if they have not introduced risk management, why it is not there? And then without it, what will happen in future that will endanger the reputation of the organization? And then you have to consider possible action for senior management with relevance to principles and practice of the subject. And then as company secretary, corporate governance professional, make recommendation on the best solution with justification. During the examination, you have to read the exam question carefully because what they ask may not be the same as what you prepare. Therefore, read the question carefully. You have 4 questions. You have to choose only 3. Therefore, you can delete the one that you feel uncomfortable. And then you analyze critically the case scenario based on the relevant theoretical framework and real-life experience, especially the case scenario materials. And then you make recommendations by demonstrating your in-depth analysis of the case material to show that you understand the subject materials. Lastly, remember that beware of the time constraint in the examination. Don't put all your time in the first 2 questions and forget about the last 2 ones. The examination paper structure and format. For risk management, candidates will be given a short pre-released case study about 6 weeks ahead of the examination time. Therefore, make good use of the 6 weeks to read the examination carefully. The examination is 3 hours. You have 15 minutes for the reading time. And then you have to answer 4 questions in total. Section A based on pre-released case. 75%. If the answer 3 out of 4. Section B is not based on the case study. You have to answer one question, and it is 25 marks. Lastly, the tips for successful examination preparation. Study the subject carefully. Practice on the pilot examination paper, and then read the suggested answer. Attend examination techniques workshop. Check the requirement of the examination before you go there, and start your revision as soon as possible. Study the learning material of ICS online. Study relevant material such as newspaper, magazines, business and management journal as well. Each answer is an essay. You should know an essay structure. The usual format is introduction, body, and conclusion. If you use bullet point, try to expand it into a short paragraph so that the essay is better. Aim for quality answer and not just the length of the answer. Lastly, remember to manage time effectively. Your total study time should be around 200 hours. And then I finished explaining this mismanagement. Good luck and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mac. You really presented a professional time controller and a very good demonstration to our students. So if our students have further questions, please write to our email student@hkics.org.hk. And then we will collect all the questions and make a reply to all after all the modules presentation and post to the website. So thank you, Dr. Mac. And next, and that may I welcome Professor Susana Yuen. Our next speaker, Professor Susana Yuen, the Dean of the Richard Tong Liu School of Business and Hospitality Management at Characters Institute of Higher Education. Professor Yuen is also the chairperson of the HKICS Qualification Development Panel. She spent a lot of time in helping us to develop this CGQP. And she is also a member of the Accounting Review Group, as well as the panel chair of the Accounting and Finance panel. So without further ado, before I invite Susana to talk, I just would like to remind that Professor Yuen will also spend 20 minutes for each module, and then we will move to the next one. And Professor Yuen, please.
Right, thank you. Good evening. It's really my pleasure to be here to present the examination about two papers. First of all, we are talking about the interpreting financial and accounting information, which is a part 1 examination. But before I start talking about it, I think many students get very worried about this paper because the original IQS paper, actually there are two papers covering financial accounting and corporate financial management. But in the CGQP scheme, you'll find that the financial accounting and the corporate financial management have been combined into one paper, which is interpreting financial and accounting information. But I'd like to draw your attention on the name of the paper. They're talking about interpreting. So I will talk more about this later on when we cover the syllabus of this new paper. The interpreting financial accounting information module, I think, focuses on application. In other words, you have to apply the relevant knowledge, and then you need to interpret financial accounting information. Why? Because the board needs your advice as a a corporate governance professional or corporate secretary professional. So in other words, your advice will help the board to make decisions on the company in terms of strategy development and also very important decisions concerning the well-being of the company. And this particular paper also covers the frameworks of financial reporting. I think most important, you need to know about the need for the regulatory financial reporting and why the regulatory framework is so important. And then we also examine the financial markets, explain how financing needs are set through planning, budgeting, and forecasting, and examine the importance of cash and cash management. Now, students will notice that in addition to 2 topics which are related to financial accounting, the next topic actually is relating to finance. And also, this paper covers a review of various sources of finance, both long-term and short-term. And also, you need to be able to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of each type of finance. The last one is covering the cost of capital and the capital structure when you make decisions relating to finance. And of course, working capital management is a very important issue in a company in order to survive. And after you have studied for this paper, or we call module, we hope that you'll be able to critically engage with the need for regulatory financial reporting by entities. Please note the term critically engage. It doesn't mean that you're expected just to prepare the financial statement for reporting purposes. You really need to analyze the information and then make decisions based on it. And of course, you really need to know how financial statements and reports are prepared. Now, I emphasize the word how. So sometimes you may not be asked questions on preparation of the financial statement themselves. Instead, you may be asked or discussed how these financial statements are prepared, and also how you can perform insightful interpretation for the board. Then the next one, we identify and critically evaluate sources of finance and the associated risks and returns. So knowing the sources of finance will not be just important or just enough. And then you need to know, if I choose a particular source of finance, what are the risks involved? And would that be giving you a high return? So in a way, you need to evaluate or compute using some financial models. And the next one, of course, the capital structure of a company is important, and the cost of capital also will help you to make decisions in a financial nature. The last one, we're talking about evaluate fundamental financial theories. So students always ask why we fail in this subject, or why the passing rate is so low, because I think students always skip this part, which is in fact very important for you to understand the module. Why? You need to understand the theories first before you can understand how to do it. So this is a very important aspect for you to master your subject. The Chartered Governance Institute proposed this particular governance framework. Actually, we're talking about competency. So we hope that after taking the modules and be a qualified corporate secretary or corporate governance professional, we are always focused on one thing, how to enable good governance. So you have to understand what you know. And of course, you need to think about what are the works you have to do, the action you have to take in order to create values for different parties. So this is a framework we base on when we design the modules. So tonight, I will focus more on the interpreting financial and accounting information module, telling you about the syllabus. So if you prepare for the exam, this is the first step you need to know. And importantly, is the weighting associated with each topic. So first, you need to know the need for regulatory financial reporting. So you need to know why. Why do we need to have regulating financial reporting? So that constitutes 10% of the whole syllabus. B, we're talking about preparing and interpreting financial statements and reports. Now, in the sense that when we're talking about 35% of the weighting of the whole syllabus, do you think it's important? Of course it is. So you must prepare for this topic will be examined. And then source of finance, the associated risk and return, a very important topic in finance or financial management. So it constitutes 20% of the whole syllabus. How the capital structure is formed, what's the cost of capital and working capital financial management, so that constitutes 10%. And the last one, financial decision making, 25%. You notice one thing, for this particular area, you need to know how to apply what you learn from the theoretical framework and how to apply the accounting or financial information for making decisions for the company. So here we emphasize, you need to know the theoretical and practical elements to each of these topics, as mentioned from A to E. So the need for regulating financial reporting, the most important thing, you must be familiar with the international financial reporting standards. But of course, for the Hong Kong papers, we have introduced to you that you need to know the HKICS financial reporting standards, which you are lucky that they are similar to the IFRS. The conceptual framework for financial reporting also will guide you what will be the guidelines you need to follow. So this is also a fundamental topic you need to know. And then preparing and interpreting financial statement reports. Here we highlight that single entity financial statements are also as important as a published account. So you need to know about the accounting standard related to it. But in addition, for published accounts, you need to know about the content in the company ordinance relating to the financial reporting. And of course, the interpretation of accounting policy based on HKIFRS, which I just mentioned, which is published by the HKICS. And then you're talking about groups of companies. We're talking about holding or subsidiary or associated companies, how you're going to report the performance of these companies within the group. Then you come to analysis and evaluation of financial statements. So one thing I'd like to remind you, for this particular topic, you don't just know how to prepare the financial statements. In fact, you may be asked how you do it, and you have to discuss it in words. In other words, it's not just computation. Then the next one, we're talking about sources of finance. So notice about the financial markets, and also for company, when and how you need the financial support for your company survival. And of course, there are two types of finance. We're talking about long-term and short-term. So in each of these topics, you need to know about the type of finance that you can acquire, and then whether you need a short-term or long-term finance, very much depending on your need, the need of a company. So you need to talk about this and why you choose a short-term one, why you choose a long-term one. So the rationale behind is important. Cost of capital and capital structure, obviously, will help you to decide what will be your format or the nature of your capital, and then it linked to the cost of capital. Because certain structure may incur high cost of capital, which may not be so beneficial to a company, then you have to think about what should be the combination of the capital structure in order to get an optimal cost of capital. Then working capital management, obviously, you know about the current asset, current liability position, and this is most important for short-term survival of a company. So it's particularly important for this particular topic. And financial decision making. Now notice that when you are asked any investment appraisal techniques, such as maybe we talk about discounted cash flow, payback method, and so on, always talk about advise the board what will be the associated risk in each of the techniques. and why you propose it and so on. The next one is about company analysis and help you to adopt each type of business valuation method. So you have to think about which one is more appropriate. So know the calculation, how you calculate it, and also you need to compare each of the method and the advantages and disadvantages. Obviously, in most important case, you have to say why you choose this method for your company. Of course, this company will be a scenario given in a question. Project appraisal techniques, also important. You need to do a bit of calculation. At the same time, you need to give advice. Based on the calculation in your first part, you will advise the board, which is the most optimal investment or project for the company. So read the syllabus very carefully. So the difference between the ICSA CGDP syllabus, most important, in the new module, you need to know the regulatory framework and the role of the IFRS. But for Hong Kong module, we talk about Hong Kong FRS. And the other one, preparing or interpreting financial statement and reports. So you need to know the published accounts contents and features in particular. As I mentioned to you, the Commons Ordinance will be also a good guide, and Stock Exchange also have provided some guidelines or requirements actually. Now, what does the examination paper look like? So this will be a part 1. You have a written examination, 3 hours, plus 15 minutes reading time, total 100 marks. The format of the exam paper is different from what you used to see in the IQS. So we have section A, 25 marks, and it's compulsory. Section B, 25 marks. So for section A, we're talking about 5 questions, which carries 5 marks each. So you can see the length of the answer, or the length or the depth of the answer will not be so similar to that required in section B, which is a 25 marks, 1 question. But of course, we have A, B, C, D, and so forth. But the whole question will help you to gain 25 marks if you'll be able to answer well. Last section, 50 marks, you have a choice, which is you only need to complete 2 questions, 25 marks each, from a choice of 3. Of course, there will be a mixture of scenario-based and non-scenario-based questions. In other words, you may have a question which is mainly on discussion, but you may have a question with A, B, C, D. A, B are the computational, and the last one will be a discussion. Tips. Now, I'm not giving you tips for the topic in the exam, but I'm talking about the tips, how you prepare exam. So you might have gone through this in the other module presentation. So sure, you read the syllabus carefully and note the respective weighting of the topics which I just mentioned to you. The new syllabus combines both financial accounting and finance disciplines. So you should rely on the study pack, because study pack has been revised or amended according to the Hong Kong context. And it is including the financial accounting and finance disciplines. But I would advise you to work out the illustration, but not just to memorize the solution. So I noticed some students, they just flip through the study pack without using a pen. Now not many people using pen. So, but you have to use a pen or pencil to really work through this solution. I emphasize this. This is so important. You will not pass the exam unless you work through the illustration, but not just to memorize it. But of course, most important thing, you need to understand the conceptual framework of each topic in order to be able to know why you do it and how you're going to do it to achieve your objective. And then, of course, make reference to the required additional reading. Most important thing, you need to keep updated with the recent changes in accounting standards and reporting framework. The Institute always announces the 6-month rule to you, so pay attention to what's the announcement on the website. And also the new subject focuses on how to prepare relevant financial statements and financial decisions. So you need to analyze and apply not just calculation. Work through the pilot papers, but not just read through it, which I mentioned early on, and then attend examining technique workshop and manage your time effectively. Now, specific exam technique, as you know that section B would be a scenario question, not necessarily report a case, because a case would be a few, more than 5 or 6 pages, but you'll be given scenario one. But one thing, please answer the question with specific information given in the case and scenario. In other words, your answer should contain the specific name or the specific scenario that's given to you. Next one, computational question, show your workings. If you don't show your workings, if you make a mistake somewhere, you don't get a 100% correct answer, you have no marks. So unless you show workings and show step-by-step presentation, that's important. Discussion type, apply the rules and regulations, but don't just memorize the material, but you need to show how you make use of the rules and regulations to answer the specific questions given to you in a section. Always students ask, which topic should I study? But I can tell you, you have to answer, you have to revise all the questions. It is important. Of course, within the topic, you can think that some of the topic you can master better, so you focus more. One thing I'd like to remind you, when you answer the exam paper, of course, I haven't mentioned it here, but you need to know the instruction. The marks allocated to each question. Why? When you answer the questions, you should not spend more time in relation with the marks allocated. So there's a good tip to you. And my last one would be, if you are answering all the questions, it's better for you, because you can get fairly maybe a pass, or you still get some marks from your question, but don't spend all the time on one question. So that's all my advice to you. So good luck and thank you.
Thank you, Professor Yuen. Yes, we have another good demonstration of time management. 20 minutes and then make a very good tips in particular, because I think most of our students are quite worried about this new model, a combination of the financial accounting with the financial management. So I hope that our students will get something from this presentation. So without further ado, shall we go to the next topic?
Okay.
It's the Hong Kong taxation.
Okay, our next module is on the Hong Kong taxation. And I want you to look at the screen that this is under part 2. And you can see that under part 2, there should be only 3 modules, but you have a choice. You can either choose the boardroom dynamic or Hong Kong taxation, but you cannot attend both of the modules. So please don't register for 2 modules and you'll never get through to the examination. Okay, Hong Kong taxation. What we want to focus on will be the content, the scope, content, expectation. But the important thing is you need to be familiar with the current law relating to Hong Kong taxation and also the practical application to companies, partnerships, and individuals. So what does that mean? Actually, Hong Kong taxation system is very simple, but the student may think that, oh, the scope actually is very wide. But I think if you understand the law and regulation, you are, I'm sure that you'll be able to apply this and also get good marks out of your attempts. So what will the Hong Kong taxation module for you? So obviously, first thing, when you answer the question, we expect you to demonstrate an understanding the tax system administration in Hong Kong. Most students just understand the tax system, the fundamental knowledge of it, but they always ignore the administration. So, so you'll be alert to how the system is administered by the Inland Revenue, of course. So we expect to demonstrate understanding of the current state of development and contemporary issues relevant to Hong Kong taxation. So including law, concept, principles, and practices. And the most important, you know, to apply tax rules and principles to determine the tax liabilities for companies, partnerships, and individuals in Hong Kong. So my advice to you, when you're thinking about this aspect, you pretend or you assume that you are, if it is a company, then you are the assessor in the Inland Revenue, and think about how I'm going to charge the tax on this company, on this partnership, on the individual. So always think about that. But of course, there are questions also from the taxpayer's perspective. So you'll be able to apply the rules and principles from these two perspectives. So at the same time, we hope that you can identify and evaluate the impact of relevant taxes on various situations and course of action. Because sometimes you'll be asked not just a computation of a liability, but you may be given individual cases or scenarios and ask you what will be the course of action you will propose. And then obviously you really need to know the tax rules and the regulation very well. Then apply, communicate tax knowledge and practice to form sound judgment for business operation investment decision. So obviously when you make decision like that, the tax implication is very important. So unless you know the rules and regulations concerning the tax related to this business operation or your investment, then you are not making a full judgment of what you're going to invest. So formulate and evaluate basic tax planning ideas and strategies in the context of relevant principles and practices. This is one step beyond preparation or computation of tax liabilities. But this is one step which is more advanced, that is to formulate a proposal for tax planning to the board so that the company can benefit from it. So again, this is a competency framework of the governance professionals. So the most important thing that you need to understand first, and then you practice it. And by your application and practice, you create value. So we're focusing on good governance. And this is how all the modules are designed under this framework. The scope of the Hong Kong taxation module, we have 8 sessions. So again, read the syllabus carefully and the weighting of each topic. The general concept of Hong Kong taxation system is a background information for you. So you need to understand it before you can proceed to how to calculate or compute the liability for limited companies, partnerships, and individuals under profit tax. So surely there's section B, 30%. So profit tax would be a very important topic in this syllabus. Section C is concerning about individuals' salary tax. So you have to understand how would you prepare or compute the salary tax liability for the individuals. But don't forget for B and C, the most important element in the computation, you have to decide what are allowable for deduction for computation of tax liabilities, and also what are not allowable under the computation. So this is the most important aspect in computation of the liabilities under profits tax as well as salaries tax. The taxation of income from property under property tax, actually quite simple. So this is constituting 10% of the syllabus. And of course, another item is whether you would like to elect for personal assessment, which is 5%. A very small topic, but very common in Hong Kong, that taxpayer will be eligible to elect for personal assessment. So you will ask when. So normally, Inland Revenue will help you to compute what's the benefit to you under personal assessment. The relevance of 3 separate income taxes to management decision-making and corporate planning will be 10% on the whole syllabus. Other topics like stamp duty, double taxation will also be included in the syllabus. So again, you have to think about the theoretical and practical elements of each of the topics from A to H. Okay, Hong Kong taxation system. Notice that you need to describe the key features and what types of tax will be under this particular system. Who are the administrative bodies? So ensure that you know. An issue of tax returns and assessment. So when and how you fill in the tax returns and how the assessment is computed. And then there's a different issue like payment and recovery, holdover, and refund of taxes. And of course, the last one, the objections and appeals. So when you receive a tax liability notice to say when you need to pay the tax, and you can appeal, but of course within a certain time. And the Hong Kong taxation system, the main body or the authority of officer in Hong Kong is the Inland Revenue Department. And then they will be the one to work out the liabilities for you. But the taxpayer or his agent will have the duties and liabilities for filling in the tax return honestly. Of course, you need to supply evidence as appropriate. The sources for Hong Kong tax law is giving you the background. And then we have the statute law, case law, board of review decision, which are also important when you attend this paper or module. So what is the tax status? The tax statute. So you need to interpret it and see how it can be applied. The basic law is important in Hong Kong, and explain applied departmental interpretation and practice notice, and it's also important. So this practice note 29 particularly mentioned in the syllabus, that's why you need to know about it. And we're talking about taxation for limited companies, partnership, and individuals. So what is the scope of profit tax? In other words, who will be charged profit tax? And badges of trade, where is the source of your business profits? What's the deemed trading receipts about? And the general deduction and specific deduction. So this is what I meant about allowable and non-allowable items. Distinction between capital and revenue items, we have different taxation treatment for it. And also, what's the tax treatment when we have losses in a company? And the taxation of limited companies, partnership, and individuals under profit tax, obviously you need to know what's the basis period of assessment. So it applies different situations like business commencement and cessation. So usually that will be another different issue you need to know. So when you have stock valuation and change of intention, what's the tax implication? Corporate treasury activity and the ascertainment of profit tax liability. We're talking about partnership and allocation of profit and losses. Of course, that will affect the tax liability of individual partners. Depreciation allowance for plant and machinery. Depreciation allowances for industrial buildings and commercial buildings. Obviously, you can see that the two types of assets in a company will have different treatment in terms of the allowances or the depreciation allowances we're talking about. Now, the individual income under salary tax, we have to know what's the scope of salary tax to be charged, and then the time basis assessment, personal allowances. So you can select personal allowances, which may be beneficial to the taxpayer. And what about treatment of benefits in kind, housing benefit, share-based benefits, which are the items associated with individuals' benefits received from the employment. Treatment of lump sum receipt and losses, separate taxation of spouse and joint assessment, so you can select that. And ascertainment of salaries tax liability, so that involves computation in the whole process. And then we're talking about property under property tax. So again, the scope of charging property tax, then the chargeable property owners of land and or building, so they have a different tax liability, ascertainment of assessable value and profit tax liability. So how are you going to work out the assessable value? So you need to have professional advice and also based on the rates issued to you. Now then, the election for personal assessment, you have a choice, but of course, before you make a decision, you need to compute the total income and tax payable under personal assessment. So you only choose for the one or for the scenario which is more beneficial to you. But in fact, I think inland revenue will help you to work it out. Then the relevance of 3 separate income taxes. So what are they? So you have to think about when you make management decision making and corporate planning. So here you think about the first principle, anti-avoidance provision. So you need to be familiar with this ordinance. The Ramsay principle, offenses and penalties, advance rulings, Hong Kong tax planning, field audits and tax investigation, and also explain the DIPN 11. I noticed that there's a revised version and how to you apply for your computation and assessment. Stamp duty. So when will you need to pay stamp duty? And when you have conveyance on sale of immovable property, so that where stamp duty will arrive. And the agreement for sale of residential immovable property, you need to have a formal one, a written one. Lease of immovable property, Hong Kong stock, voluntary disposition intervivals, and exemptions and reliefs, adjudication, assessment, administration. And the last one, how do you plan to have a benefit from assessing stamp duty? So stamp duty planning is also important. So of course you need to be aware or understand the latest regulation on stamp duty arising from sale of immovable property. Double taxation, so that will be someone working in both countries, and how would double taxation relief will help you. So the taxation of cross-border activities, and then you can apply for double taxation relief based on the agreement arrangement between Hong Kong and the other country. Right, let's talk about the paper structure and format itself. Written examination for 3 hours. Of course, you'll be given 15 minutes reading time, total 100 marks. The paper is in 2 sections. Section A, 40 marks. Now, this section is a case study or scenario, so usually about 2 to 3 pages, but there is a maximum of 5 compulsory questions. No choice. You have to answer from A to E. And then section B, 60 marks, you can have a choice to complete 3 20-mark each question. So you have a choice from 5 questions. But one thing, good news for you, the relevant double taxation agreement will be provided in exam paper. So don't memorize it, okay? But understand how it's applied to your assessment. Tips for successful examination preparation. Of course, you need to know the syllabus very well. You practice on the pilot paper itself. Attend the exam techniques workshop. Start your revision earlier. So then study learning materials of HKICS. Keep updated with recent changes in the tax legislation. The 6-month rule we talk about. Study relevant materials such as newspaper, magazine, business, and management journals. But one thing I'd like to remind you, you also have to refer to the the Board of Review decision, so which is also important for you. So aim for quality answer, not the length of the answer. So up to the point, and manage your time effectively. So 200 hours for study. Specific exam techniques. So when you receive a scenario question, one thing you must make sure your answers are specific to the case or scenario. Don't just put down the theory or the conceptual framework of a particular issue. So you need to show you apply the rules and regulation to your assessment. But when you answer this type of question, always refer to the specific information given. Computational question also show workings. It's important because you can gain marks even though your answer is wrong in the computation. Discussion type question, don't just memorize the rules and regulations and put it down in the answer. And that's why students ask, why is it that I know the topic so well that I fail? Because you don't know how to apply the rules and regulations, which is required by the question. So again, try to study all topics and then you can see the weighting of the syllabus. We'll give you some idea. Again, manage the time in answering each question based on the marks allocation. Don't spend all your time in one question. So try to answer all questions as required. And good luck, and thank you.
And thank you, Professor Yuen, and have given us a lot of tips, in particular to these two papers. In particularly, most students find it difficult to prepare. So, if our students have any questions on tonight's presentation or about the preparation of the examinations, you are welcome to write to us to the student account, student@hkics.org.hk, and then we will collect all the questions and replies to you after all the modules are completed, and then we'll post the answers on the website. Just to remind you, the third session of the CGQP law modules update will be held on tomorrow at 6:10. And I would also like to remind our students that the e-learning platforms provide convenience and vital learning support to you. And remember to use your student account to log in to the login area to access the online materials like the pilot papers and the suggest answers, and to register with the Prime Law online platform for the online study materials. I would like to give some reminders on our forthcoming activities, like from April 8th to 24th, we have the exam technique. It should be seminars because it will be online. We don't have much interaction between our tutors with our participants. And then you can enroll now. And then we will have the governance professionals informations on 17th March to June. We will have 3 young professionals sharing with us their life experience, and how to become our members. And then we have the Governance Professionals Career Day on 2020, on the 27th of June. It is an event which we give to the young undergrads and also our young students to join us. A lot of information about the profession, about career prospects will be shared with you. And we also have workshops on communications. And so these are where you can look for our technique seminars, and with the governance professionals information section, and also the career day. And finally, today's session is recorded, and you are welcome to view the webinar video later, and then we will inform our students where you can log in for this. And finally, I would like to thank Professor Yuen, and indeed Dr. Mac is with us here also, for your sharing. And also thank for our students joining tonight's online gathering for this CGQP update. Good luck to you all, and good night. Bye-bye.